Welcome to Blinkers Off with your hosts, Jared Welch and Aaron Halterman.
Hello. What is up? I'm Jared Welch. He's Aaron Halterman. It is, what day is it? Wednesday, October 29th, and this is Blinkers Off. We've done so many Blinkers Off this week that, and going to be doing more that. Got to keep an eye out what day it is.
That's right, yeah, and it with these big weekends like the Breeders' Cup and the Kentucky Derby, it is wild for sure, and it also means Jon White returns to the show as well. So a lot to do today on this show. It's going to be fun to get his thoughts. The drama that was Sovereignty. Everything looked great. Every report you read about Sovereignty was, oh, he couldn't look any better. This horse is amazing. I'm going to tell you something. Every time I read that, something happens to that horse. I feel like the very next day that I read it. So fever, scratch. Now we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So basically we were, in the final stages of the betting Bible, and, then that news came out yesterday. And we're like, oh shit. And so it's kind of then to this morning that, officially comes out. And yeah, so we've been doing that. I've been the betting Bible, by the way, guys, is available right now. So if you're just not tuning in, the betting Bible is available. The final version, well, quote unquote final, obviously we'll update with scratches and things of those nature. It is only Wednesday, but that is available right now. It's 23 pages, so go get that if you haven't already at racingdudes.com. But yeah, and what's funny about it, not really funny, but now I guess all you can do is laugh at this point, is that even now, Mott's I can't figure it out. He doesn't even know. He acts like he doesn't even know he's sick. He's eating. Doesn't look any different than he, as far as how he acts and those things. So it's like a guy like Bill Mott, who obviously knows a thing or two about how a horse looks and acts and things like that, is even I can't figure it out. Why, how the fever even came about. So it's just really, he's such a talented horse that he probably could go out there and still win the thing, even with the fever. But obviously, they're going to do what's best for the horse and scratch him.
Well, I'll tell you this. I got a text message from a buddy of ours that is around horses every single day. I won't say the name. I don't know if he wants his name out on the air. And he told me, he said, if this wasn't Bill Mott, I would think something is very fishy, because it's very rare that a horse would have a fever, but showing no signs of it. He goes, and again, I would never think Bill Mott's lying to us. I think he's telling the truth. He goes, but that is very, very strange. So he didn't say it was impossible, but he said that is very rare that you see that. So I don't know. I don't really know what's going on, but I knew when I heard the news that he wasn't going to run. I've just never heard of one getting a fever and running before. And then also it's Bill Mott, and if that horse isn't 1000% ready to roll, he's not going to do it. And that's what you should do. So I'll say one more thing about it. Thank you for not waiting until Saturday morning to do this. I thought that was a very classy move to let the public know immediately of what was going on. And we got the news, and we were able to kind of pivot, and it took a while. You got to rethink the race, but at least they gave us a little time. If we would have woke up Saturday morning and saw that, I think we all would want to throw up, right? So now we don't have to go through that.
Yeah, listen, for a guy, it's also the same horse, same connections that didn't run the Preakness, right? And not obviously he did have an issue with his health, but it was to kind of protect his health. And it's whatever we want to feel about that, you kind of knew, like you said, a lot of trainers or may have done something different or whatever the case may be, and he was just very clear. Just from jump, kind of hey, this is what's going on. If it kind of gave us even a timeline of here's what's going to happen, and if this doesn't happen by this time, then we're going to scratch, and that's what happened. So they've always done, and a guy like him and connections like Godolphin and all those things, they're not, it's maybe they don't have Sovereignty again, who knows, but they're going to have a lot of opportunity. And they're not going to do anything, but that's going to put the horse in any sort of any possible jeopardy. So
yep.
Definitely a punch in the gut. You prayed and hoped that it wasn't going to happen, but you kind of knew the writing was on the wall yesterday when that news kind of came out. It's certainly, the race is still an amazing race. It's way more challenging now because me and my co-host here really, really love Sovereignty to win, and I think we kind of clarified that as you go through it. Like, hey, we really did like Sovereignty because we have a tough time who to pick now. With that said, it's the reason why it was such a tough race for Sovereignty is still true, and that means this race is still incredibly tough and talented and just a little bit more difficult now.
I would describe the race as still a great race, just not an all-time great race now. I think Sovereignty coming out, kind of, you can eliminate the words all-time great. We were talking about one of the best, if not the best of all time. I don't think it's that now. I still think it's great. If you would have told me last year, the 1, 2, 3 winners the 1, 2, 3 finishers of that race will be back this year, I would take it, and I wouldn't really care who else was there, right? Because that means, hey, they all ran as 4-year-olds, and they're all here. So, and they've had various wins throughout the year. Maybe not as many wins as we thought, but still big wins on the resumes of all 3 of them. So, yeah, it's still a great race, and it's much more, at least in my opinion, it's much more of a puzzle to solve now, which is fine. That's why we're here. That's why we do shows. That's why we do products for you. So, no big deal, right?
Yeah, it's like if I would have said, hey, the top 3 finishers from last year coming back in the race, the Preakness winners coming in the race, the Pennsylvania Derby, who's kind of like a now horse coming into the race, you're like, oh man, like
still
okay,
great.
The horse that, not to mention, like all these 3-year-olds, it's just are so good this year. And then you're like, but by the way, the horse that beat those horses is not running, so that's the negative, but it's still a hell of a race. But let's not waste any more time. You're not tuning into this show to listen to us talk about it. We'll talk more about it Halter and I tomorrow on our regular programming blinkers off. But today we're bringing in the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Dodger, Jon White, the longtime morning line maker at Santa Anita, Del Mar, and of course the Breeders' Cup. You can't have a Breeders' Cup, or at least I don't have a Breeders' Cup, and look at the morning line without thinking, what would Jon think of that morning line? And that's, it's nice when you have him on speed dial basically at this point, like we do. Oh, by the way, he's in the Hall of Fame with Washington Racing.
That's right.
So this guy pretty much does it all, has done it all. He's going to give a look at what he's going to be playing in the 42nd Breeders' Cup World Championship. Of course, he is in the betting Bible as well now. So if you're looking for his top 4 picks for every single race, not just the Breeders' Cup, every race running on Friday and Saturday, those picks are included in there. But listen, you can't have a Breeders' Cup without getting a feel for Jon White's thoughts, especially when it comes to something that's already been dramatic with Sovereignty scratching. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go. Listen, the thing I love most about Jon being on these shows is it's like it gives us a look at, or gives the people a look at basically what our conversations are with him anyways. Like,
that's right. Yep, that is right.
The stuff that we don't even talk about until we have this show. And then, so he's learning from the show, including us.
Yep, that is correct. Very much true.
All right, guys, without further ado, let's bring in the man, Jon White. How's it going, buddy?
Going great, guys. You make a good point about how these shows tend to mirror just how we act when we're together. And I go back to the first time we were together before a Breeders' Cup here at Santa Anita. And we were at Matt Denny's, which is we've been at a few times. Had a few adult beverages there and some good dinners. And, from that first time, this is going to be very much similar to when we were all talking there at Matt Denny's that day.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we at this point, if you can't, like, you live out there, so we have to get some sort of advertising, or even if they just give us something free when we go, because we mentioned Matt Denny's on this show more than they probably know, and it'd be nice if we got a little bit of a boost from that when we go in, because I mean, listen, free advertising. But with that in mind,
Jared, you're always thinking. You're always thinking.
I'm a businessman, Jon. Anything, if you're good at business, you got to find ways to make money doing it. So listen, let's get to the kind of the meat and potatoes here with the biggest news. Sovereignty, who obviously had a hell of a year, was really the highlight. He was the classic favorite, and scratching this morning. Kind of your thoughts on that and what it kind of did for the race for you.
Well, like everybody, I mean, it just changes everything. I mean, not only the Breeders' Cup Classic, but the entire Breeders' Cup. He was the star of the Breeders' Cup, the superstar of the Breeders' Cup. And to lose him here, I think you made a great point, Aaron, that thank goodness we didn't lose him the day before the race, or even worse, the day of the race. So we've had time to kind of, deal with this. But you were talking about a fever, and there might be some people skeptical in certain cases where, yeah, did he really have a fever? Well, sometimes a horse will come out of a race sick and didn't even show a temperature going into the race, like this horse did.
Yep.
And I'll cite you an example in 1973. Secretariat, after he had swept the Triple Crown and won a race at Arlington Park by a block for fun, showed up for the Whitney at Saratoga. And I mean, you thought there wasn't any way on earth this horse could possibly lose. And you watch the race, and a horse called Onion upsets Secretariat. And I can remember sitting in front of my color TV at home going, what in the heck is this? You're in shock. It's like, how can this happen? Well, Secretariat came out of the race very sick. And in fact, he was out of training for several days, and they had to crank on him so hard to make the Marlboro Cup, which was the first running of the Marlboro Cup. And that was originally proposed as a match race between Secretariat and his stablemate, Riva Ridge. Don't forget that in 1972-73, Meadow Stable, the owner, breeder, Lucian Lauren, the trainer, and Ron Turcotte, the jockey, won 5 of the 6 Triple Crown races. They almost won back-to-back Triple Crowns. And only BBB on a wet track in the Preakness defeating Riva Ridge, who then came back, and Riva Ridge just won the Belmont by a big margin and defeated, among others, BBB. So Secretariat, as I say, and they got him to the Marlboro Cup, and he broke a world record that day, defeated a field that would be comparable of how we were discussing this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. A field that strong. It wasn't as big, but it was a who's who of racing. I talked to Charlie Whittingham years later, and said, what do you remember about the Marlboro Cup, the first one? And he ran Cougar the second, who was a tremendous horse. And Charlie looked at me and said, I thought I was a cinch to win it, beating not only Secretariat, but his accomplished stablemate, Riva Ridge. And Cougar ran third behind Secretariat and Riva Ridge. And that is regarded as probably Riva Ridge's best race of his career, in that running second, a couple of lengths or so behind Secretariat, and defeating the horses he beat that day, including Onion, by the way, was in that field and nowhere. So, as I say, that's an example to where they didn't even know he was sick till like the next morning after the Whitney. So these horses, people sometimes forget, they're not machines.
Yep.
They're animals. Living and breathing animals. Jared is raising 2 sons. Sometimes one of them wakes up, is not feeling well. You take his temperature. He's got a temperature. You go, well, no school for you today. So this is very similar with Sovereignty. You say, oh, we took his temperature. It was 103. Should be 101. Uh-oh. So they treat it mildly. They didn't give him antibiotics at first, because the problem once you get a temperature, as I was texting you guys yesterday, the more you have to go down the road of treatment to get the temperature down, and the closer to the race you get, you can't run in the race because you'll get a bad test with the medication. And see, they gave him once they knew he was out of the race, bingo, he went right on antibiotics, which you can't give them antibiotics, run them in the race, and then all of a sudden we're going to get one of those bad test deals.
Yeah.
which is a nightmare we don't want to go down. That's for sure.
Nope.
So, so that's the tough situation there. Now, you guys were talking about the morning line. And of course, I made 8 of them for the Breeders' Cups. And it was interesting to me on David Aragon. And by the way, this year is kind of Breeders' Cup history before we even get to the Breeders' Cup. This is the 42nd Breeders' Cup. And in the 41 previous Breeders' Cups, the person at the track of the Breeders' Cup that makes the morning line for that track has made the morning line for the Breeders' Cup races. And that changed this year. Instead of the Del Mar morning line maker, it's David Aragona, the New York line maker. So that's a whole new shift in terms of the morning line. And David got the pleasure, I'll put it, of waiting until they got the post positions before he released his morning line. My last 2 Breeders' Cups I made the morning line for, I had to have it so they could show the odds as they were showing the horses right at the draw. So, which is better. That's better for the bettors and everyone for David Aragona. Now, that said, David's original morning line, one of the ones I raised my eyebrows at was he had Sierra Leone 8. That made no sense. First of all, I would never make the defending winner who had won the race as a 3-year-old, and now was 4, that high of a price.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way too high. And what's funny is I think David Aragona, after the scratch of Sovereignty, had a talk with himself and agreed with me, because originally he had him 8, higher than Forever Young, and now he's the co-second favorite with Forever Young, as they're both 7-2. So all of a sudden now he's changed that from his original morning line. I thought that was very interesting. So, the morning line making is a very tough job, guys. I think you guys have learned that through the years, that it's a thankless job. Let me tell you, you get it right, nobody says boo, and you miss one, and the whole world's in a tizzy. So, and David Aragona is absolutely an outstanding. I mean, I think the Breeders' Cup has really done well to make him like their guy. So I have no problem with that. But I was really surprised to see Sierra Leone at 8-1. That just, and in his early lines, he had him like co-second favorite with, Fierceness behind Sovereignty. All of a sudden, he jumped him up. He had Fierceness 4-1 and Sierra Leone 8 after having them the same for like weeks. So that kind of baffled me, quite frankly. And yet he came back to what I thought, which that was way too high. And all of a sudden, when he releases his revised morning line today, he's got Sierra Leone the same price as a Forever Young and co-second favorites behind Fierceness. And Fierceness most likely is going to be the favorite. And this is a horse that we've discussed ad infinitum. I mean, Jared came up with a great comparison football-wise with Fierceness. Jared?
No, it was actually, I don't want to take his credit, because it was
Okay.
actually Halterman that did it, because it was
Oh.
so good. I was like, yeah, you're right. And, you said the same thing afterwards. Halterman, you go ahead. This guy's not even playing right now, by the way, but who does he compare to?
Yeah, geez, what a gut punch. Jared almost taking my credit there.
I didn't. I could have. I could have.
Look, I compared him to Lamar Jackson. And what I meant by that was there's times you watch Lamar Jackson and you go, wow, I don't know if you could ever stop him. He's unbelievable. He's making every throw. He's running up and down the field on him. He's amazing. And then at times you watch Lamar and you go, well, he cost that team the game. I think they would have won with another quarterback. So, yeah, I compared Fierceness to Lamar Jackson. I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's just who kept popping in my head. Samich actually put me on the spot and asked me while we were on a show and didn't tell me he was going to ask me. And so I was proud that I came up with Lamar after just a second of thinking. So, yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, credit goes to you, Aaron. And I liked it right away. I mean, I got exactly where you were coming from on that.
Yeah.
And this is the thing with Fierceness. I've been lucky. I've been in sync with him all along. And that's like a miracle, because he's up, he's down, he runs good, he runs bad. I mean, And I've been lucky to catch him when he runs good. For instance, one of my proudest morning line prices when he was a 2-year-old, he'd run such a clunker in the Champagne, but I made him 6-1 on the morning line out of respect for the connections, mainly because one thing about Mike Rapoli and Todd Pletcher, these guys are not dummies. And once he got buried, Fierceness in the Champagne, I thought, well, these guys are going to send him to Florida and point him for the Triple Crown next year, point him for the Kentucky Derby. I mean, how are they going to run him in the Breeders', ship him across the country and run him in the Breeders' Cup off such a clunker? So when he showed up, I thought, wow, that is very, very interesting. And look, one thing people make too big of a mistake, I've said it before on your show, and it's human nature, we all do it, but you put too much emphasis on one bad race or the most recent race. One thing that the Thoroughgraph and Ragazine, but especially the Thoroughgraph sheets, have taught me, and listening to these guys that are the sheets gurus, the both Thoroughgraph and Ragazine, those guys have got great payoffs through the years by not looking at the most recent race, but the race before, or maybe the race 2 or 3 back, that is good enough to win this race. I'll give you an example of that. One of my picks, and by the way, holy Breeders' Cup, it's an honor to be in the betting Bible. But
hallelujah, John. Say it.
There you go. Amen. One of my picks in there, will let the cat out of the bag, because I know this is not going to be a popular pick, is Tommy Joe. Because everybody doesn't like her last race. So she was 2-5 in the race. Now she's 7-2 on the morning line. A dramatic difference. Now, I ask you two guys, what if, let's say hypothetically, Tommy Joe had won her last race by 5 or 6 lengths? What would her price be in the Breeders' Cup?
I think it would be pretty similar to what you see with Ted Noffey and Brandt in the juvenile. I think they'd be very similar to that.
I think that's exactly what, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think it would be, 4-5, maybe.
I mean, exactly. I mean, instead she's 3.5 to 1. Maybe she could even go off at 4 to 1 or something. A filly that was just 2-5. Now, I will say, I understand not liking that race. I was lucky. I bet her big and got lucky with the DQ, which is not something that happens to me all that often. Usually I'm on the other side of a DQ like that. Because I'm with everybody that says, I doubt she was going to win. I really don't. But I can't say that emphatically either, because she got her momentum stopped and she got on the wrong lead. I mean, it got messed up too. Yeah. But honestly, if I were to bet the race over and there's no bumping, I would bet the other filly.
Let me say this, John, because just to kind of prove your point, I'll let you go. But I think I don't remember which race it was. Do you remember Halterman when John had this talk with us about never letting one race dictate?
Well, he had his talk with us some, and I never listened to him stupidly. But Sovereignty was the horse that the first horse I applied that logic to. It was after Fierceness. It started to kind of sink through, and then after Sovereignty, that little Jon White in the back of my head was like, "Hey, it's just one race. You really liked his other races," and so honestly, that helped me cash the pick 4 and the pick 5. And it was your kind of talk, John, and exactly what you're laying out. I didn't give up on him, even though right after the race, I kind of said I was going to. I calmed down, and it was because of what you were saying.
Yeah.
See, one thing about Sovereignty, and I understand, Aaron, why you were down on him out in the Florida Derby. I get it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Sovereignty didn't lose that race. Bill Mott did. And the reason I tell you that is Bill Mott didn't give a hoot whether he won that race or not.
Right.
If you would have said, okay, this is a $10 million race and it's going to decide horse of the year, Bill, he would have had Sovereignty ready to win that race.
Yeah.
He had a different target. And where I learned this were trainers like Charlie Whittingham, Laz Barrera, Richard Mandela, Bobby Frankel, John Gosden. I mean, I've been around some of the greatest horsemen of all time. And those guys, what made them is when you're talking about a Kentucky Derby, a Santa Anita Handicap, a Pegasus, whatever, those guys know they're not worried about up to the race. You know, Charlie Whittingham with Sunday Silence ran him in the Super Derby back when it was $1 million race. And I was on a Las Vegas radio show, and the guy was telling the host before I came on what a cinch Easy Goer was. And I came on and said, well, there's a cinch, but it ain't Easy Goer, it's Sunday Silence. And I had it wrong all year up to that point. I kept betting against Sunday Silence until the Belmont, and then I bet on Sunday Silence in the Belmont and got my hat handed to me. And but by the time they got to the Breeders' Cup, it was clear Easy Goer could beat Sunday Silence on a mile oval, but not the 1.5 mile big oval, which was more suited to the big Easy Goer. Sunday Silence was more athletic and always got the jump on Easy Goer. And the other thing that happened in that Breeders' Cup Classic, which is one of the most famous of all time, 1989, because that settled Horse of the Year that year, was the fact that Easy Goer was backing up from 1.25 miles to 1.25 miles from 1.5 miles. The Jockey Club Gold Cup in 1989 was 1.5 miles. And Easy Goer had a tough enough time trying to keep up with Sunday Silence, who was just faster early and more tactical. And that was another detriment to Easy Goer on that mile oval of Gulfstream. And guess what? The Phipps family, after that Breeders' Cup, shortened the Jockey Club Gold Cup the next year to its current distance of 1.25 miles, because they said this isn't working to back up to the 1.25 miles for the Breeders' Cup. So they changed the distance of that race off of that Breeders' Cup Classic. But I mean, the thing is that was vintage Bill Mott, because he's a throwback to those guys I was just talking about. A Hall of Fame horseman. He's a horseman. And he's a guy that can bring a horse along and get them to peak, you know. And the sad thing is, I mean, look at what we might have had this year. Sovereignty, I think, would have won the Triple Crown if they'd run him on all three. I think it's pretty clear. Because journalism won the Preakness. And I at that time, I don't think journalism could beat Sovereignty. So we kind of lost out on a Triple Crown. Now we lost out on Sovereignty even running in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So it kind of gives you an empty feeling for how talented he is. And look, I was going to pick against him in this race with a horse. And the reason being, the price was going to be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were saying, John, who do you think has the best chance to win the Classic? I would have been on board with you two. Sovereignty, clearly. But as far as like the betting Bible, you're trying to help the fans maybe make some money. And you're going to have a better chance to make some money with the horse I'm picking at the much better price. But now that Sovereignty's out, he was 6-5 in the morning line, it just has deflated all those odds on everybody. And that's kind of the bad aspect to this scratch too, is how it's just ruined the prices. If you wanted to try to beat Sovereignty, this is really, you know, kind of ruined the race really in a way. So, but as you guys pointed out, it is still a really marvelous race. It's one of the better Breeders' Cup Classics really we've seen. It just isn't, as you said, Aaron, it's not one of the all-timers now. It just isn't. And which is unfortunate because we were all excited about that.
You know, Halter and I were talking earlier, and we were trying to recover after, you know, it's like, okay, now Sovereignty's out. How do we kind of redo this race a little bit? And the one thing that's just so evident is every horse in this race is so consistent. You look at like and then Fierceness is Fierceness, right? But even then, I mean, he's, 10 of 13 on the hitting the board. Baesa is, he runs his race pretty much every time, even the, Nevada Beach does, they're stepping up Forever Young has hit the board in every start of his. The list goes on. Sovereign or Sierra Leone has. Mindframe hasn't even lost a race this year, other than a race that he, the jockey fell off. So my point, journalism, another horse. So like it's just top to bottom. They're just so consistent. You got to make that the trick here is trying to figure out which ones are going to be able to show up on this big day. And who outclasses who, and it's just a tough little task to figure out.
That's very well put, Jared. And that's one reason for the horse I'm going with, which is Forever Young. One way to approach a race is if everybody runs their best race, who's going to win it? Now, I go back to if Sovereignty was in it, most likely, I think the world recognizes you feel like he would have won it. But look, another reason I was willing to take a chance against him, he's never shipped across the country. He's never run at Del Mar. I mean, these are things that, after the race, you could have been looking and going, well, how did Sovereignty get beat? And those are factors that can come into play in a situation like this. So do you want to take the short price on Sovereignty when he does have these, I'm not going to say huge question marks, but at least he had some question marks from that standpoint. And he looked really great training into the race, and everybody, that's another reason we're, feel let down, is because he had looked terrific on the track and everybody was raving about him. And and he's given all signs that he's so special. So, but look, getting back to if everybody runs their best race, who then would win the race? And that's easy for me in this one, even if Sovereignty had been in it, because this horse, Forever Young, ran to me one of the best races to win the Saudi Cup you will see so far this century. And one of the European experts on FanDuel pointed out, he said that's maybe the best race we've seen in the Middle East at any of those tracks in the Middle East this century. What he did with Romantic Warrior. Now let's talk about Romantic Warrior. And this is one reason I got to Forever Young over Sovereignty. Who's better, Romantic Warrior or Sovereignty? Well, maybe Sovereignty, but that's no cinch, because I'm going to tell you what, Romantic Warrior is a phenomenal racehorse. Do you know how much money he's made? Over $27 million. Over $27 million. Now, he had never run on the dirt before the Saudi Cup. So that was a big question mark with him. But he made a move on the turn and he blew by Forever Young. Blew by him.
Yep.
Believe me, in the upper stretch, if you stop the race and we're all going to bet on the race, I happen to have bet Romantic Warrior. And I thought, well, here we go. Head to the windows, we get you're going to cash. And that Forever Young put his head down. And how he ran that horse down that day was just beyond tremendous. Visually, it was tremendous. It was 10 and a half lengths back to third. 10 and a half lengths. In other words, if you take Romantic Warrior out, Forever Young wins by 10 and a half. If you take Forever Young out, Romantic Warrior wins by 10 and a half. See, you don't really give that race its true respect because the two horses were together at the finish and absolutely slaughtering the rest of that bunch. Now, that's visually. It's nice when your visual impressions are backed up by, I guess we'll use the term, the metrics. And I didn't see it myself, but I read and was from a trusted source that in that race, Forever Young's thoroughgraph number was a negative 5 3/4.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I was just showing that to Halterman today.
Yep.
-5.
Well, 5 3/4.
Yeah, it's huge.
And do you know what Flight Lines was when he won the Breeders' Cup Classic? What thoroughgraph number he got? He got a 6.
Wow.
That's what Forever Young is capable of. Now, That said, there are concerns. Did that race take if he was a filly or mare, he would be in that category of those fillies and mares, like Rachel Alexander when she won, beating the boys, and I in her last start of the year, and I said she's knocked out, she'll never be the same, and she wasn't. And Torpedo Anna out of the Travers, I don't think she's ever been the same.
Yep.
And there's a chance Forever Young that ran such a huge race that day, even though it was clear back earlier in the year, it might have knocked him out for the rest of the year too. But I don't think so. The way I've seen his energy, I've watched him like a hawk. And he looks better to me coming into this race than the Kentucky Derby, as far as his energy and his appearance. And I will also tell you two guys, I'm very confident, and the trainer has said this, but sometimes the trainers talk and sometimes you can take what they say and agree with it. Sometimes you go, well, I don't know. This trainer, who is a Charlie Whittingham, like of Japan, which is what I told you guys when I liked Forever Young to win the Kentucky Derby, which I think he was the best horse in that Kentucky Derby and should have been placed second. Sierra Leone should have been disqualified from second to third. But these horses, again, they're not machines. And so a huge effort, and this is where the sheets started this. They called it the bounce. I certainly think this is why Forever Young ran flat in the Dubai World Cup. And even then, it wasn't that bad a race, I'm going to tell you. But, getting beat by Hit Show doesn't make you go, wow, I love him in one of the toughest Breeders' Cup Classics we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But you've got to take these in their circumstance. And there's no question the traveling and that effort, to me, that was a bounce to the moon right there. I love the way he looked in his comeback race. Sure, he didn't beat anything, but that was just a total prep. Again, those top trainers like a Bill Mott, he'll use the Florida Derby as a prep and doesn't care if they even win. That's this trainer from Japan right there. So I think he's bigger, and this is what the trainer has said, and it makes sense that he is. He's bigger and stronger now than he was last year as a 3-year-old. And most of the time, horses don't reach their peak till they're late in their 4-year-old year or 5, which is why so often the older horses, even late in the year, have an edge over the 3-year-olds. What we saw last year in the Breeders' Cup was not a function of how 3-year-olds are usually better than the older horses late in the year. That's not true. That was an exception. And why was that an exception? It was a weak year for the older horses. Wouldn't you guys agree with that?
Yes.
We didn't have the kind of older horses last year we have this year, with those horses coming back out of the Breeders' Cup, for instance. Those horses last year, the older horses in the Classic weren't much, which is why good horses like we saw ran 1, 2, 3. So, I mean, there's so much to like. And I loved Forever Young. We're going to be 6-1 on the original morning line. He was 8-1 earlier in David Aragona's odds. When I did odds for Blood Horse, I made him 6-1 because he had way too good of a chance to be 8-1 in my book. And now he's down Coast second choice at 7-2. So that's very unfortunate for me. But I'll still be playing him. I mean, one thing that I have going for him, yes, my price has been killed, but I don't have to try to beat Sovereignty this time. And I like my chances a lot to beat the rest of this field, especially since I'm not picking Fierceness 1, 2, 3, 4. Because if you're not going to pick him to win, why pick him to run second, third, fourth? He might, but he's just as eligible to finish worse than fourth, quite honest, if he doesn't win. And he certainly could win. If he runs anything like the Pacific Classic, it's hard to envision him not winning. I mean, that was really just the lights out.
All right. You guys both like Forever Young, and I don't dislike him, but I do have another horse on top. And can I make the case why I don't like him real quick, and I'll let you respond?
Of course. That's what makes racing. Okay. Absolutely.
He can win because I think the spec 6 of them can win. But here's kind of what I don't like about Forever Young. 0 for 2 here. I don't care about the Derby. Weird race. He had a million excuses that day. I don't know where the excuse was. A lot of people think it was the rail that got him beat at Del Mar last year. I'm not sure. The thoroughgraphs, yes, he does have that huge race. All of his other races, I don't think are good enough based on the thoroughgraph. So those are the things when I looked at, because I had Forever Young on top. And well, you guys know, I texted you. I said, I don't think I can do it because, yeah, I do see that race. And that was a great race. The rest of these are very good efforts, but I don't think they're good enough to win here. So as I kind of say that, what's kind of your thoughts on my thought process, I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh, I think that's a very valid, I mean, that could definitely turn out to be the case. There's no question about it. But again, if you sink your teeth into his record, 9 wins from 12 starts. Okay, now we'll look at his 3 losses, which you've talked about. The Kentucky Derby. In my eyes, that was a win. I mean, for the way he ran that day, that's not a loss, that's a win. He'll beat Mystic Dan 99 out of 100 times. We'll start right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now last year's Breeders' Cup. To me, that's the hardest one to explain, and yet it's not like he ran a stinker. He actually ran pretty well, and
He did.
I think he was kind of over the top, is the phrase in racing, when a horse is kind of done too much and they're going the wrong way. And I honestly think he'd done so much as a 3-year-old last year prior to that Breeders' Cup, traveling all over the place into Japan and the Middle East and the United States and the Derby I think he was just not as sharp as he was earlier in the year. Now, I'm making excuses for him there, but
yeah,
I think he's a much better horse now than he was then anyway, like most horses are when they're 4 rather than 3. And then, as I say, I really don't hold that Dubai race. Again, I think if he runs against Hit Show, he'll beat him 99 out of 100.
Oh, yeah.
99 out of 100. That's the one out of 100 that Hit Show beat Forever Young.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, he's so close that you can really see he's virtually undefeated. He's so close to 12 for 12. And the thing about your numbers that I would say in his defense, you don't want to hold it against a horse too much for doing what they had to do to win. In other words, he didn't run fast enough, or he didn't beat anything, or whatever. Those things don't come into play quite as much for a horse that just goes out time after time and basically wins like he does. So in other words, the key is, I think that Saudi Cup, and listen, I'm going to say maybe that wasn't, it looked like something like a 5 3/4 to me when you're watching the race, because I think those 2 horses ran like, Secretariat that day, but you don't think of it like Secretariat. They are arrogant because of the fact they were together. And the key is, who is he together with? And it was that the key. So who is your pick, Aaron?
Well, I hate my pick, but I do. I'll go ahead and say that, but I'm going to hate whoever my pick would be. I went with Sierra Leone.
And that's understandable. But
Yeah.
see, for me, is Sierra Leone better than Romantic Warrior? I don't even know.
No.
Is he as good as Romantic Warrior? Oh, I don't think he's in the same zip code as Romantic Warrior. So that makes it easier for me to embrace Forever Young. When he can go catch that horse that day, and especially, listen, guys, you've watched. It's been a pleasure to know you 2 guys for over a decade now. And you guys have watched a jillion races between the 2 of you. How often do you see a horse absolutely make a blitzkrieg move around the far turn and into the stretch, take the lead and open up a clear lead?
Yeah.
And be pulling 10 lengths away from the rest of the field and have a horse catch it? How often do you see that? Very rarely. Very rarely. So, and the thing is, it wasn't Romantic Warrior stopping, because that does happen sometimes. He moved too soon, and probably did anyway, really, and it may have cost him the race. But the thing is, the 5 3/4 or just the way it looked or the gap back to the rest of the field tells you it wasn't Romantic Warrior slowing down or weakening, or not finding late. It was he got caught running his race and a big race. But Sierra Leone, listen, especially with the rabbit to ensure a legitimate pace for him. Now that helped him a ton last year. That crazy pace in the Classic, 44 and change for a mile and a quarter, 109 and change. I mean, that's just radioactive, as Randy Moss would call it. And that's why I thought Fierceness ran the best race in the Classic last year, personally, because he was on that toxic pace and still there at the end. I thought he deserved a ton of credit for his performance that day. But listen, Sierra Leone, Jared, you used the word consistent or consistency, and Sierra Leone embodies that.
Oh, yeah.
You can't be more consistent than that horse. He goes out every time, and no matter the track, the surface, the pace, whatever, he's in the top 3. And I picked him third. I think he'll be in the top 3 again. Would I be surprised if he won? Not even in the slightest. And I'll go this far. I didn't hate picking him third. Aaron hated picking him first. I didn't hate picking him third.
Well, here's what I kept going back to. Again, a lot of his Thoroughgraph numbers. Okay, take out the Saudi race. They've been better than Forever Young, and he's beat him head to head at the distance twice. So that's where I was just like, I don't know that I'm willing to take the same exact price, which I don't know if they'll actually be or not. But look, I was so high on Sovereignty in this race, and the reason was I really don't like betting all these other horses. I haven't been on the right side of a lot of these horses in these races. So there's no question Forever Young will probably beat me since I bet him last year and I won't have him this year. That's what a lot of these horses have done. Where Sovereignty, I win on every time. But again, I just looked at it and thought, I've seen this play out twice. I was on the other side of it last year. And my biggest thing is I have no argument. What Forever Young did over at Saudi was incredible. I struggle to find another race where I go, that was really incredible. That's where I'm at with it.
Oh, and that's understandable. Like I say, but again, you have to be careful not to be too harsh on a horse for not running faster when they keep winning.
Oh, for sure.
That's where they can really fool you. And that's like an undefeated horse until they get beat. You have no idea how good they are because they just keep doing what they have to do to win.
To be more than fair to Forever Young, and I'm not a hater at all. By the I have Forever Young in third, and that's what I'm not gonna be shocked at all if he wins. I thought his race in Saudi as a 3-year-old, I thought that was a very, very good race that day when he beat Bookham Dano, who's turned out to be a great horse. I thought his Kentucky Derby was just phenomenal, which is why I bet him last year in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I'm not really worried about the Dubai World Cup. I'm with you on that. I think he bounced out, or I think he bounced. I don't know how. I don't know if he can raise that game to that level of the Saudi Cup. I don't know if he can do that again. That's where I'm at. So.
And I think that's fair, but I was much more excited to be trying to trust in him to do that at 6-1.
Yeah.
Or 8-1.
Yeah.
I'm not as enthused about this situation at 3-1 or 7-2 or 4-1, quite frankly.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's where I say that's kind of the Sovereignty scratch. And listen, one reason it was easier than maybe some other circumstances, I've spent most of the year trying to beat Sovereignty. I tried to beat him in the Kentucky Derby. I tried to beat him in the Belmont. Now, I was on him in the Travers, but that race, believe me, you can take every other horse in this race except the Rabbit, and they would have won the Travers by, that field. I mean, Baeza would have won that. If you take Sovereignty out and put Baeza in for Sovereignty, Baeza would have won that by 6.
Yep.
I mean, that race, it kind of dressed up Sovereignty because it made him look even more powerful. So, which was fine when I'm trying to beat him. And I go back to saying, if you say who is the most likely winner, I'm not going to say the most likely winner was Forever Young. I'm saying the most likely winner was Sovereignty.
Yep.
So, but it was a golden betting opportunity. I considered it. And those don't come along every day. Again, as you two guys, now veterans of this game of well over a decade, these cases were like when I bet Fierceness in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, when I saw he was in double-digit price, and I'm going, I'm saying, what if he'd won the Champagne by 5? What would his price been in the Breeders' Cup? It wouldn't have been double digits.
Right.
So everybody's hopping on one bat, that I can't like him off that race. And the thing about racing is one of the best things to learn is to be able to draw a line through a race. It's like a puzzle, and you can draw the lines, and then you look at it and you go, aha, I see. And that was the case there with Fierceness. I bet him in the Pacific Classic because I thought journalism was so overbet, it was absurd.
Mm-hmm.
He opened 1-9 and went off at low odds. And I'm sitting there looking at Fierceness going, we're back to, if they run their best race, who wins the Pacific Classic? See, we're back to that.
Yep.
And Fierceness had run better races, not always, but when he'd been Fierceness, he'd run better than journalism. And yet he's a much better price. See, and you don't get that. You don't get that all the time. If you did, I'd be retired. Oh no, wait, I am retired.
Well, what do you? I mean, the issue with Fierceness is always going to be: do I have the stones to take him at a short price, because he is? And now all of a sudden we're going to look at Fierceness being the favorite of the Classic, and that's. I think we're all on the same page. It's like, hey, at his best, he's really, really tough, but he's also Jekyll and Hyde, and you don't know what to do with him. And as good as he ran last year in this race, he got beat to Sierra Leone. And, and as good as he looked at the same sentence, he looked amazing at the same track, at the same distance in his last race. And everything went wrong, and he still did. So it's just, how do you handle a horse like this?
Well, as I told you guys, I think the word that fits him, he's a quandary every time. But the thing I've kind of I've gotten in sync with him is zig when you should zag.
Yeah.
In other words, like in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, when everybody was off him, that's the time to play him. In the Pacific Classic, when people were flocking to journalism, I'm on Fierceness. So why am I off Fierceness this time? I'm not going to go back to the well again after what we just saw. Now he's the favorite. I mean, for Pete's sakes, I mean, is he the deserving favorite? Yes, he is the deserving favorite, and especially off the Pacific Classic at that track. And he seems to like that. His race in the Breeders' Cup, he lost, but as I say, I thought he ran the best race that day, considering he attended that just sizzling pace and was still at the end, and it's set up for Sierra Leone. So, and one thing about Fierceness that I think makes him more formidable now, for instance, he doesn't have to have that early lead. He showed that in the Pacific Classic for sure, because when he took the left-hand turn to almost duck into that temporary rail, and he sat back, and that was a brilliant ride, I thought, because I was telling, since I bet him, I was coaching the rider there. And when they got toward the far turn, I said, send him. Don't monkey around, send him. And just take it to him. And that's exactly what he did. That was a Gary Stevens, Pat Valenzuela type move that won a ton of races for those guys, including Gary Stevens. That's how he won the Kentucky Derby on Winning Colors. He opened up an insurmountable lead on the far turn and an upper stretch and barely held on over 49er. But don't be passive, be aggressive. I mean, and especially with Fierceness. Now, the Fierceness that fortunately I didn't bet him that day, but there's that race that we all watched. We're turning for home. He looked like the absolute lock of the century. When he turned for home, it looked like he hadn't even been asked. And I mean, there again, if you stop that race right there and say, okay, I would have bet Fierceness despite his peccadillos. And yet he folded bad. I mean, You just can't trust him. That's the key. And do you bet him? Now, do you leave if you're playing the pick six? And I plan to play the pick six with our good friend Ryan Stillman. So he'll probably be in for a whopping maybe 1%, 5%. I don't know. But we'll play the pick six. Would I leave Fierceness out of the pick six? No. Am I going to single Forever Young? No. And there's plenty of other, I think, solid looking horses, fortunately, in that pick six sequence that you don't have to be singling forever. See, I wasn't going to single Sovereignty, but I would have had plenty of horses to beat him. And if you can beat a Sovereignty, you jack up your payoff exponentially. I mean, if you're alive in that pick six, and basically my plan is to maybe have everybody but the rabbit, which would leave that open that the rabbit would win. I mean, you'd have every other horse, and then all of a sudden, crazy thinking would pull off a 80-1 upset when he wasn't even, And I'll give you an example how that can happen. The late Professor Gordon Jones, who was a legend here in Southern California, writing for the Herald Examiner newspaper, the Los Angeles Herald Examiner. He in college, one of his professors. He was a professor. One of his students was Al Michaels. And they would go to Turf Paradise. Professor Gordon Jones would stop class in time so they could get in Professor Gordon Jones's car and drive to Turf Paradise to bet the Daily Double. Back when that was the only exotic bet we had in those days. We didn't even have exactas. So you had to get to the track in a hurry to bet the first two races of the double. But Professor Gordon Jones, when I was working at Fairplex in Pomona, doing TV in the morning line, one time and he had a pick six club where he would get people to put their money in and they'd have a good ticket. And in the press box, he would make copies of his pick six ticket to give to all the people in the club. And one time he left his ticket in the copying machine. And he hit that pick six and he's frantically coming up. And the guy that ran the press box had grabbed the ticket for him. And Gordon Jones came up and he's going, has anybody seen that ticket? And the guy goes, I don't know. And then finally he gave it to him. But I think Gordon Jones lost 5 years off his life on that deal right there. But another Gordon Jones memory at that same track, dealing with the pick six, oftentimes the final leg of the pick six at Fairplex was the feature race. And this particular day, they had a field of 5, like fillies and mares. And Gordon used 4 of them for his big club. And sure enough, the horse he left off won at like 20-1, and he would have hit the pick six. Would have been a great price because he left the horse off. But those are lessons that you've kind of learned. It's dangerous always to leave one horse off your pick. If you're going to go that far, hit the all button. But I cannot use that rabbit. If that rabbit costs me the pick six, I can live with it.
That's a really good segue. I'm not using the rabbit either, by the way. But talking about leaving off, because a horse that I've gone from this, and this was again prior to or after Sovereignty being scratched, a horse that I went from, hey, I'm picking, I think, to I don't know if I can pick. I'll probably use in the top 3 to didn't even make my top 4 is Mindframe. Okay. And what do we do with Mindframe? And, because this is a horse that had he not, now again, we don't know, right? But had he not the issue, in the Jockey Club and not fallen off and, things, there's a world where he's second choice of this race now. But there's also a world now where he's not included. We don't know because the question mark is too big, and he hasn't ran since summer. And what do you do with a horse like this? He also hasn't lost this year either. He's beaten Sierra Leone this year. So, where do you think he's good enough, and how do you handle betting him here?
He's definitely good enough. Again, I wouldn't let him beat me. No way, no how. He will be on my pick six. If he wins, he will stake a claim for Horse of the Year.
Yeah.
His record is good enough. He'll be in the conversation. Sovereignty would still get it, I'm pretty sure. But Mindframe probably would finish second. If he wins the Classic, there's a good chance he'd finish second in the voting for Horse of the Year. And like I say, he'd be in the conversation. But one thing that troubles me about him is the fact that because of the losing the rider, he's had such a long layoff since he had a real race. So if this was last year's Breeders' Cup, again with a weak group of older horses, that type, not as deep a Breeders' Cup, I would be more for him. I think he's hurt by this being as tough a Breeders' Cup as it is. Starting when we were dealing with Sovereignty. So, I mean, to me, his chances, could you envision? See, I can make a case of envisioning my Forever Young beating Sovereignty. Now, I'm not saying it would happen. I'm not even saying it's likely to happen, but I could see it possibly happening. I find it hard to picture Mindframe beating Sovereignty. So that's kind of where I have a little bit of a problem with him. I have a better feel for like Sierra Leone maybe having a chance to beat Sovereignty. So that, Mindframe, but he's so talented. And I mean, except for the race that doesn't count, because I mean, that's just draw a line through it. But I think, again, so many people focus on a horse's last race. It's one of the things I learned making the morning line is that I can draw a line through it, but can the rest of the public, most of the rest of the public do that? And often they don't. They look at that form and they don't like that. It doesn't look good. And so they shy away. So, I mean, but Jared, this goes back to the point of we were making earlier. Don't hold the one race against him, especially that one. When he did, it wasn't even a race for him. So that one we really shouldn't, and yet a lot of people are. And I think it's reflected. We were texting back and forth on his odds. And in the early odds, I had him 8-1. Aragona had him 10-1. So I was giving him more respect than Aragona. And because of the fact that I'm not as harsh on that last race, and I think he's a more live horse. And he's the type of horse it's tricky to determine how he'll get bet. He might get bet more than we think, or he might not get bet much at all. So, I mean, he's a real tricky read. But is he capable of, without Sovereignty, winning this race? Absolutely. I won't let that horse beat me. He's run too many good races. And as you say, he's already beaten Sierra Leone. If you're good enough to beat him this year, that means you can win this race.
Yeah, and he did it somewhat decisively, really.
That's right.
It was very impressive. And yeah, I mean, I've always liked Mindframe. And so, he's kind of just feels like one of those weird horses. I was telling Halterman earlier that I'm just as excited to see Fierceness versus Mindframe, just because we've always kind of had this question of like, we've always asked, which one's better, and where they kind of point to them. And now it's like, we finally get to see the two in a race, and they both have very similar styles as well. So it's going to be kind of interesting how they run the race and also where they're placed in the race, and kind of determining where they're at, late in this race and who is ahead of who.
See, in the Fierceness versus Mindframe debate, I go back to, if it's the good Fierceness, he would win. If it's the bad Fierceness, Mindframe would win. So the question is, could the good Mindframe beat the good Fierceness? And I kind of don't think so. From what we've seen, if we see a race from Fierceness like the Breeders' Cup or the Pacific Classic, those ones that we go, wow, Fierceness. See, I don't think Mindframe's run a race like that. But if Fierceness does one of his ones that we just scratch our head and go, what? Especially that one that turned him for home, he looked like he was an absolute cinch.
Yeah.
And he doesn't hit the board. I mean, it isn't that he got beat. I mean, look at the Kentucky Derby. I mean, this horse, it's such a feast or famine with him. Not always, because he ran a very respectable second in the Breeders' Cup last year. So that you can't even trust him that it's feast or famine. It's feast, famine, or something in between. I mean, he's one of the quirkiest horses we're ever going to see. I mean, he really is. But as far as making picks, I'm more prone to pick him off a clunker than off the Pacific Classic. And I've had good success with him doing that. It doesn't always work, but that's worked pretty well with him. That if he runs a bad race, now I'm on him. If he runs a good race, I'm off him. And that's the case here at the Breeders' Cup. And especially if he's, 5-2 or 2-1 or, whatever he's going to be, it's fine for him. But again, I'm not going to let him beat me out of the pick six. I can tell you this. The horse I'm going to bet's Forever Young in some amount. But I won't bet him as heavy as I did in the Kentucky Derby, but I'll bet him pretty good in this race. But I was going to make a bigger bet on him at 6-1, I can tell you, because I felt that was such a golden opportunity to get a world-class horse of that magnitude who looks that good coming into the race physically and has the credentials he does, to get him at that kind of number, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is a rare opportunity, and I was going to take full advantage of that. But now that he's either 3, 7-2, 4-1, I'll bet him, but not as aggressively, because it's not as worth it to me. I'm not going to get the score I would have got at those odds.
So the storyline kind of going in obviously was Sovereignty versus the Olders, but Sovereignty's not in the race, and the horses that he's been beating all year, other than Nevada Beach, who's also 3. Are in. And, so I wanted to at least kind of get, he's not in, they are. Baesa Journalism, and of course, and then the kind of the I call him a news shooter, kind of the late to the picture 3-year-old in Val Baffert Barn, Nevada Beach. When I look at those latter, Baesa and Journalism, it was very clear all year. It was Sovereignty, Journalism, Baesa,
Yep.
And it was very they ran that way, every time they face, they kind of did it for us. Do you start to wonder if maybe Baesa is it's taking time to get to where he's at, and he's sort of bypassed Journalism as being that second best horse, not named Sovereignty?
I definitely think that's a possibility. I mean, I can't say that's for sure, but I think that is his Pennsylvania Derby was a step forward for him. Now, it's hard for me to get all goo-goo over Baesa when I kept betting him over Journalism, including the Santa Anita Derby.
Yeah.
I bet him in the Kentucky Derby, and I bet Baesa in the Belmont. I mean, Baesa kept burning me, but I'm going to tell you, one of the keys here, and these are the things that kind of get overlooked by the general public, and as those of us that play the game like we do, we find these little nuggets that escape the general public. And this is where you take advantage and get a better price. And this is the case, I think, possibly with Baesa. He's a late foal. And I'll tell you how that worked for me once before. Mucho Macho Man was a June foal. And that's really late. And what he did early in his career really impressed me, considering he was so late to the party being born versus those in his class. And so when he got to be a 5-year-old, older, 4 and 5, he grew up and he won the Breeders' Cup Classic. And one of the reasons I kept my eye on him for that Breeders' Cup Classic, and he helped me win my fantasy league that year. If he loses the photo, I lose my fantasy league. We came down to that race. And Byron King of the Blood Horse, who won more titles in my fantasy league than anybody, was going to win another one there if Mucho Macho Man loses that photo with a comebacking Gary Stevens. That's when Gary Stevens had retired and came back. And Gary Stevens rode just a tremendous race that day. And I mean, it came down to inches. And but see, Mucho Macho Man was really an overachiever. People that don't know what to do, how important when you're foaled, what that means, they would look at his early career and say he didn't do much. And it's the opposite. He actually was overachieving. That's kind of the case here to a large extent with Baesa. And Sheriffs has said this from the beginning. He's said all along, it's going to take time with him. And this is why that Pennsylvania Derby might just be the tip of the iceberg here. I'm picking him second. And I gave thoughts to picking him on top. I'm telling you, I think he's primed for a big effort here. I really do. And again, the bar isn't set. The key about this race now is the bar isn't set as high as it was with Sovereignty. It's not going to take Baesa as big an effort to win it now without Sovereignty as it did before. Makes him even more dangerous to me. And he's the price. On the revised morning line, he was 15 on the original and he's still 10. Believe me, that's a good. In fact, I said I'm only going to bet Forever Young, and now that we discuss it, I'll probably have to throw a few dollars on Baeza because I've lost so much on him so many times. It'd be kind of stupid at the price he's going to be not to at least put some money on him. So I'll probably have to bet them both, and it's only because if Baeza's down there, if he happened to be 4-1 or something like that, he's not worth it to me. But if he's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. He's worth at least a couple $100 to put on there. So, and journalism is fascinating too, because going into the Derby, I think we all thought he was the horse, not Sovereignty. And we came out of the Triple Crown realizing it was Sovereignty. But look, journalism, that poor guy was put through the ringer this year. Unlike, say, Sovereignty, who skipped the Preakness and took his time and this waited till the Jim Dandy, and old journalism's out there like the guy with the lunch pail. He's going to work every single day, and he runs in the San Felipe, the Santa Anita Derby, in the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont, the Haskell. He's just run through the ringer, and I think it showed in the Pacific Classic. People have knocked the rider, and listen, we all have questioned some of the rides on journalism. But to me, he didn't have much ammunition that day. That horse looked flat to me.
Yeah.
He looked kind of like Forever Young in the Dubai World Cup, but he looked even flatter. And I think it makes sense. How many horses run in all 3 Triple Crown races today? He was the only one.
Yeah, none other than him.
Then he didn't rest until the Pacific Classic or something. I mean, it made sense, so I don't hold. That's why one reason I bet against him in the Pacific Classic, when they were betting him like he's Secretariat. He opens 1-9 and they're leaving Fierceness alone on the board. I think at the time I bet Fierceness, he was like 5-1 or something, and his odds dropped, which we've had 8 million of those in the last decade. And Fierceness's odds dropped to where they belonged anyway. But that horse now, and look, Jose Ortiz has ridden in absolute sensational form all year to me. That guy, and look, I think that horse with Ortiz is another. And again, how consistent is he, Jared?
Oh, I mean, he literally does nothing wrong. I mean, other than, he finishes, the worst he's finished was a 3rd place finish where that was his debut race. He's sprinted 1 or 2 every time.
Yep.
And by the way, the losses, guess who the losses were? The losses were to a horse named Sovereignty and Fierceness. Now, one of them's in the race. So there's.
But look at the price he's going to, again, on the morning line. We have journalism. He was 12 originally, and he's cut it more than half. He's 5. But
journalism's he's been the favorite in 6 straight races. Journalism has.
Yeah, think of that. And now he's 5.
And by the way, he had to face Sovereignty, and he faced Sovereignty and Fierceness in 3 of those races, and he was a favorite in all of them. And
we all know watching that Preakness, what he did in the Preakness is one of those performances that your jaw drops. You go like, how he won that race. It shows he's very special. That's why I wouldn't leave him off my pick 6 in a million years. And those horses, especially if Sovereignty were in there, any of these horses were going to just jack up your price if Sovereignty happened to lose. And listen, one thing you have to approach horse racing with is the thought that any horse can lose on any day. There's no such thing as a cinch. Man of War, who I think was the greatest horse of all time, got beat. Secretariat, who many people think is the greatest horse of all time, had 5 defeats on his record. 5. It's like, how can that be? Spectacular Bid got beat in the Belmont Stakes. Like, I mean, everybody thought he was a lock for the Triple Crown and got one of the worst rides you'll ever see in the history of horse racing. And it was the last time that jockey rode the horse. Ronnie Franklin was replaced by Bill Shoemaker, and Spectacular Bid never lost another race except when, as a 3-year-old, he faced the older Triple Crown winner, Affirmed. We're back to the 3-year-old versus the older horse, which is another reason I'm in the forever young camp over the 3-year-olds. As good as these 3-year-olds are. But we also have to consider something Jared just said a few minutes ago, and that is coming into the Breeders' Cup, was journalism considered the best of the 3-year-old crowd? No. Sovereignty.
No.
Was Baeza considered that? He wasn't even considered the second best.
Yep.
And yet I'm sitting there saying now Baeza might win it because I think because he's a late foal, I think he might be a much better horse. And listen, I respect everything John Sheriff sends out. How he's not in the Hall of Fame is one of the injustices of this sport. And there are many Hall of Fame injustices in this sport. But John Sheriff's, how he's not in there, just alone with his work with Zenyatta, but he won a Kentucky Derby, beating my closing argument, who was 70 to 1, 71 to 1, and got beat a half a length by Giacomo. And believe me, if you could win a Kentucky Derby with Giacomo, that makes you a great trainer. That wasn't much horse, believe me. I mean, he was decent, but he's not one that we're sitting here going. I mean, Baeza would clean that horse's clock, which is one reason I've liked Baeza, because I feel he's infinitely better than Giacomo. But Giacomo wasn't running against Sovereignty. See, Giacomo would never, to me, he would never, no, I can't say never because I said anything can happen, but that's another one of those. I think that Giacomo would lose 99 out of 100 to Sovereignty. And there'd have to be one weirdo one maybe thrown in there, but you know, but that it's to be the right horse on the right day, get the right trip and everything. And, you know, the thing about our classic now, as I say, the key is the bar's been lowered. And so these other horses all come up to where they can win this race. That bar was kind of, I'm not going to say out of reach, but it was kind of a reach for pretty much everybody. That's why I liked Forever Young. I didn't think it was as much of out of reach for him. But everybody now, that bar, except for the rabbit, I say the bar's within reach to win this race. I really do. There is a one horse in here, I'd say. I wouldn't talk anybody off of any of these horses except the rabbit. And like I say, I could just see him 5 in front, 10 in front, turning for home. And all of a sudden it's a speed favoring Del Mar track or something, and they can't catch the rabbit, and the racing's sitting there going, how in the world did this happen or whatever? I mean, well, that the odds of that happening are, you know, humongous. But I've seen enough crazy things in racing during my life that you learn that you say, you know, you have to be ready to expect anything because it can happen. I mean, and that's what makes betting tough, because we can't go in there and just assume horse A is going to beat horse B and B will be second and C is third and it's that easy. And no, it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way.
I mean, I totally agree. That is the quandary, right, of the whole betting situation. I have to bring this up for a second. It just made me laugh when he brought up the Mucho Macho Man Breeders' Cup Classic. So we didn't know you at the time, but we did know Ryan Stillman at the time, our mutual friend. And so I was the biggest fanboy of Will Take Charge, the horse that ran second that day.
Ran huge.
Yes, and we were standing right there at Santa Anita, right when they really start to make their big move, okay? And I thought he won the race. Okay, it was that close. And also, my heart wanted him to win the race. I just fell to my knees when I saw that photo. And Ryan comes up to me. You know how Ryan, he always tries to be like upbeat.
Yep,
He's like,
glass
hey,
half full.
Right. He goes, hey, don't worry about it. My good friend just won his fantasy league because of this, And I looked at him, and again, I didn't know you at the time, John, or I would have a different reply. I looked at him and said, I don't give a shit about your friend, Ryan. So when you said that, I just thought of that story. And
Well, even knowing me, I wouldn't blame you for having that comment because we're all in this to win, for Pete's sakes.
Well,
That's the thing.
And so, John, the very next year, we're back there with him, and he's talking about his friend again and his fantasy league again. And finally, I said, who the hell is this friend? Because he's playing in a horse racing fantasy league. He's got to be a big fan of this stuff. That's not something you just go to ESPN or Yahoo and find.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, it's Jon White. And I said, oh, so I said that about Jon White last year. Thanks for letting me know that, So
Took a year.
Yeah.
1 year to find out. And by the way, I have a huge picture of Will Take Charge in my office. So that was the horse that we met several times. And
Well, you talk about turning your form around. You talk about the first half of the year for that horse and the second half of the year for that horse. You wouldn't believe that horse could do what he did in the second half of the year off of what he did in the first half of that year. See, that's the thing about Baesa. See, you can draw these this horse might be like that, a late developer. I've seen a lot of these late developers through the years.
Let me just say this about Baesa.
Arrogate was a late developer, really. He wasn't one of those Baffert 2-year-olds or early 3. I mean, he came along the last part of his 3-year-old campaign.
Well, now that race at the Belmont, I was with you. I had him too, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was rough. But listen, the Jim Dandy, and I know like Sovereignty wasn't, we talked about it earlier. Bill Mott definitely was not aiming for the Jim Dandy, with that horse. But I thought Baesa ran really well.
I did too.
And gave Sovereignty. I mean, a test is probably not fair because again, he wasn't. But it was like, oh, that was pretty good effort. He
held his own.
Yeah, and then of course he goes from there and does what he did in the Pennsylvania Derby, and you're like, oh, well, this horse might be like coming along at the right time, and so that's kind of where I keep going. I keep going back to that Jim Dandy effort from Baesa and thinking that was kind of sneaky good because I think we all just kind of were like, oh, well, whatever, because Sovereignty was who we're focused on, and he wasn't trying or whatever, whatever. But I was like, I think Baesa ran pretty good, and now it's no Sovereignty in the race, so. That's kind of where I am, why Baesa keeps growing on me.
Well, and it goes hand in hand with that late foaling date. See, this is the thing. We have so many stats and this and that we look at, but something as simple as that can make him more of a threat in this race than if he was a typical early year foal, a January foal, a February foal, March foal. But he's not early May, he's like mid-May. So he's flirting with June like Mucho Macho Man was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just so late. And it's the deal like if you took a freshman in high school and put them in with the juniors or seniors, he'd be overmatched because he's too young. But down the line, he's going to have a better chance. As everybody grows up, you catch up to them and, as they become men and like into the pros or whatever. I mean, it's just, I keep an eye out always for those late foals and it served me well. And Mucho Macho Man, and I apologize, Aaron.
Yeah. Way to
All
go.
these years later, I apologize.
Ryan owes me the apology, not you.
Okay.
Well, and to make the matter even bigger, I think for him is it's not like he was okay. He ran in the main special weight, then he ran in an allowance, and then he ran in the grade 3. Kind of work. It's like he went from his maiden special weight to running in 3 straight grade 1s, then the Jim Dandy, then another grade 1. And oh, by the way, the horses he was facing were like Prime Journalism and Sovereignty 3 straight times. So it's like. He was getting tested. And so just like with any, Halterman, you're, a big football guy, like a team that's maybe or a player that's getting acquainted to college football or whatever. It's like, it takes some games before they get like used to that system or whatever. I don't know. It just feels like he was thrown into the wolves, and it's taken a minute to kind of get him to where he's at now.
Not only that, Jared, and that's a good way to put it. He was thrown to the wolves, but again, consider who was throwing him to the wolves. A trainer this is so un-sheriff's like, and it shows you what he thought of him, the quality he does have in him.
Yeah.
And it's sheriff's job to bring it out, but he has said all along, it's going to take time. This isn't some, precocious 2-year-old, whatever. And you can see this development. Now, is it enough to win this race? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe he'll finally reach that next year. Maybe it isn't. We won't really, see the best buy is until he's a 4-year-old again. And that goes back to where I say these horses really, this is partly why it's been so hard to handicap the Kentucky Derby, is because, guys, when I was younger, when you got to the Kentucky Derby, look at Secretariat again. He didn't have a 2-year-old campaign of 1 or 2 races. He ran enough to be the horse of the year.
Yeah.
He ran a bunch. And so you knew, and he wasn't alone. Everybody ran a lot. That's why my first year of voting in the Eclipse Awards, I voted for Seattle Sue's champion 2-year-old male, and got a bunch of flack from my racing form colleagues saying, "Oh, it's just because you're from the Northwest, Spokane, you're voting for Seattle." And I would say to them, "Did you see his Champagne Stakes by any chance, in which he ran like the fastest mile by a 2-year-old in history? Won by and beat a horse called For the Moment that everybody was saying was the next Foolish Pleasure and Honest Pleasure from that same camp." And they were saying, "Oh, For the Moment." All I kept hearing is For the Moment. Seattle Slew buried him, left him just reeling. And I'm going like, who should I vote for 2-year-old? Run Dusty Run? Seattle Slew's, he's not even in his league. Run Dusty Run's not in Seattle Slew's league. Royal Ski? These were the horses I'm being told I should have been voting for. I'm going, no. Seattle Slew is the 2-year-old champion. Well, and what happened? I mean, who was he?
Yeah.
Only one of the greatest of all times, and undefeated Triple Crown winner. But see, his campaign by today's standards wouldn't be unusual. Look at Flightline.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that's what makes it hard. We're trying to speculate on how good these horses are as 2-year-olds, and especially in the lead up to the Kentucky Derby. And that's why so often the horses that are the Breeders' Cup winner aren't the Kentucky Derby winner, because they're the precocious ones, and the Derby winners are the developing ones. Back then, they were two in the same a lot of times. But nowadays, there's kind of a dividing line. You got the good 2-year-olds, and then we got the good 3-year-olds in most cases. So I say that, though, saying that I think one of the most probable Breeders' Cup winners is a horse by the name of Ted Noffey. I respect Brandt, but I can't see Ted Noffey. We've seen so far, I cannot see Ted Noffey losing this race. I think he's the most probable winner on the Breeders' Cup Friday card. And I say that saying it wasn't easy, because I think Precise is also a very probable winner. Forget her post. She looks better than the filly that won the race last year. I find it hard to believe she's going to get beat. Now, the juvenile fillies, a couple of horses fillies that I think are worth looking at. I said that I'm picking Tommy Joe. One reason, people aren't going to like her. But I read something or saw something, I can't even remember which now, but I have the antenna that when it was said, I know that it could mean something. And the operative word is could, not will, but could. And that is Todd Pletcher made a reference that she might have been in season. What does that mean? That means her mind was not on racing, it was on boys. And again, when you hear something like that, Does it make sense? Does it jive with what you saw? And it does to me, because that if you put that race versus her race in New York, her big win, they're night and day.
Yeah.
It's like two different fillies, isn't it?
Yep.
And here's a case where, because everybody's hopping, not everybody, but most people are, oh, I didn't like that. She wasn't even going to win, which I agree with. She's lucky to be undefeated. Now, there's a question with her. I'd like her more if she'd routed, if she'd gone 2 turns before.
Right.
That's still, but listen, she's buying into mischief. Gee, he hasn't sired any good 2-turn horses, I think. And she's out of a Pioneer of the Nile mare. He was my pick in the Kentucky Derby. Got beat in a fluky upset there by a 50-1 shot. But fortunately, I was sitting on the HRTV set that morning, and I told Kurt Hoover, I'm going to bet 1,000 to win on Pioneer of the Nile. And he says, if I were you, instead of that, I would back wheel him in the exacta, because so often we get these weirdo winners. And I bet the 1,000 because I don't deviate from my original plan, but I did that too. That was worth $10,000. Just the fact he said that, and for me to do that, which he reaped the benefits of on an all expenses paid trip to Las Vegas.
Nice.
So by Kurt saying that, that was an all expenses paid trip to Las Vegas with some wonderful dinners, and we had a good time. Now, what also, and by the way, Pioneer of the Nile, all he did was sire American Pharaoh. And I think he handled 2 turns
He was
fairly
okay.
well. He was okay.
He's average.
Even the 1.5 mile Belmont, he seemed to kind of handle it. Also in that race, and this is kind of, we get this in racing too. You guys get it. We all get it. Kind of a gut feeling. And for some reason, I have a gut feeling on La Wally from the Mark Latt barn. And I just think that Mark Latt is a ticking bomb. He was inducted into the Washington Racing Hall of Fame this year. And I've known his dad going clear back over 50 years, Ron Latt. I think Mark Latt, it's only a matter of time before he wins a Breeders' Cup race. And this filly, she was 3rd in the Del Mar Debutante, 2nd in the Oak Leaf. I think she's better around 2 turns. She was 2nd to Explorer. She was, a well-beaten 2nd. But I also had kind of a gut feeling to be anti-Explorer. I don't know why. I just have maybe I've seen too many of these Baffert 2-year-olds come to the Breeders' Cup like a cave rock, and, they look like monsters and they don't win. I mean, she's the logical favorite. She's the one to beat. I certainly feel she's the most probable winner, but I'm going to take a stand against her. So that race I picked at Tommy Joe, Percy's Bar, Explorer, and La Wally. And Percy's Bar should not be taken lightly, because I think, in my eyes, she did run the winning race against Tommy Joe. But I don't think she might have beaten the real Tommy Joe there, when I hear she might have been in season. And that's an interesting possibility of why we did not see a better Tommy Joe.
I think I'll tell you this. I can't with Tommy Joe has gone from me, again, kind of similar to Mindframe, only opposite, where I went from after that race thinking, oh man, I don't want to consider her in the Breeders' Cup. And then it's kind of like, oh, and now all of a sudden I'm kind of in that, I keep going back to what you say, where it's like, you can't take that one race. And I think the issue for her, like you mentioned, is that it was 2 turns. And so for the first try, so a lot of people assume, well, she didn't want to go 2 turns. That's why. But then, you look at the breeding, you're like, man, there's nothing about the breeding that would suggest that she doesn't want to go 2 turns. So that's why I'm hesitant and am not going to toss her in this race, just because I do think, and I think it also is like, I'm with you. I'm not like huge Explorer. I'm not going into this thing thinking, wow, she's Ted Naffy or whatever, So I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here Friday night and we say, wow, I guess Tommy Joe is pretty good, and so that's where I'm at with her. And I don't particularly love this race anyways.
Remember, people were down on Immersive last year out of the same race.
Yeah.
Saying, I mean, there were people saying, oh, there's no way she can win off of that, whatever. Well, she ran a lot better in the Breeders' Cup. See, that's again the one race. I mean, it just comes up time after time that you just don't. You got to look at it in a bigger picture than just focusing like that, because that can come back and bite you.
It's listen, I think I knew you liked him. I didn't know how much you liked him. That Ted Nafi is your best bet. Precise is up there too for me, and so it makes me feel good that those two, because those are two horses I love. And honestly, my bigger opinions as far as wins go are on Friday versus Saturday, and I think it's just kind of the way these fields are kind of shaping up, and these juveniles look like standouts in a few of these races. Talk a little bit, because like one of the big things about the juvenile, a trend, I do the 14 trends for the Breeders' Cup every year for Racing Dudes, and it's one thing about the trend is for the juvenile is look at the horses that you think will become legit Derby type horses in the following year. And Ted Nafi just screams like go ahead and sign him up for the Kentucky Derby. He'll be there.
Of the group, he's, in fact, to me at this point, he's the only one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wouldn't at this point put Brant in there. It's one reason I make Ted Nafi my most probable winner Friday, because Brant's got to answer the 2 turns. And yes, he showed in his debut he's fast, but I was not. And again, I might be off one race. I might be getting off him, and I'm not off him. I picked him second, but I might be making a mistake, not giving him more respect off his Del Mar Futurity. But I was kind of left, he left me wanting there. I wanted more from him that day. And, maybe, and especially it's on that track. So, I mean, but Intrepido is an interesting horse in there, because any horse that can overcome any kind of adversity and win means a lot to me. And in fact, that's how I got on my all-time favorite horse, Turbulator, back when he was just getting his career started. But I saw him in a sprint on a 5/8 oval, and he was boxed in hopelessly from about halfway down the backstretch to the far turn, halfway on the far turn. I mean, he was so full of run and nowhere to go, and the jockey finally got him to the outside. And when he got him to the outside, he took him all the way. That track's not as wide as Santa Anita or Churchill Downs or Del Mar. He was literally, I was standing along the rail. He was like 2 horse paths from the outside rail. And he came down the stretch that day like a blur. I mean, I thought, I can't believe what I just saw. I'd never seen anything like that. And he went on to become a world record holder and the most popular horse to run in that Northwest. But that's the type of thing that and this Ted Nafi to me has really shown. I mean, like you say, Jared, if I'm going to pick any of in fact, I'll tell you the power of Ted Nafi. In the recent years, I have bet all others in Pool 1 of the Kentucky Derby Future Wager, which it opens this week and closes before the race.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, for those guys at Churchill Downs to be able to pick the Derby winner, even now it's up to 40, used to be less than that, but out of like 38 horses, too much happens between now and the first Saturday in May. But I'm telling you, I am not betting that against Ted Nafi, because Ted Nafi is the type of horse that I would be sitting there with a big bet on all others going, yeah, but I still got to beat Ted Nafi. Yep. So he scares me. He looks like one of those rare 2-year-olds, I think, these days, because most of the 2-year-olds, even the ones we like in the Breeders' Cup, are not the Derby type horses. But this horse gives me that look, I think. And so that's the respect I have for him. And the key again is, I think, his hopeful was, and then he backed it up in the Breeders' Futurity. But that, I'm going to tell you, that hopeful is a jaw dropper for a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, that I don't know anybody in this class, including Brant. I find it hard to believe anybody could have beat him that day, for sure.
Yeah. You talk about things you don't see very often. For me, like the last, let's say 50 to 100 yards of that race, whoa. It was like, whoa, he found another gear.
Yep.
And so I was pumped to try to,
Yep.
see him for a mile 16th. And he looked very good doing that too. Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, I remember your text after his next race, though. Here's the Breeders' Cup winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So another one. We'll talk about one more race real quick, and because I am interested. This is besides the Classic, the main event Saturday is in the turf, right? With the Rebels Romance versus Minihawk, and Aiden O'Brien choosing to run Minihawk against Rebels Romance when definitely could have been, and in your words, a cinch. It feels like in the filly and mare. And they said all along, she's a stayer. She wants to go long, and that's where they aim. So what do you think that means for a horse? Like, how much credit do you put into that? Where you're like, hey, listen, they could have not faced Rebels Romance, and they not only are they opting to, she's the favorite in the race.
Well, I think you raise a very good point there. It's the type of thing that was one of my dad's flaws as being a horse player. He could read a racing form as good as anybody I've ever seen in my life. By the way, I'm just going to take a little quick drink here.
I thought you were just getting the cup to just showcase that the Dodgers are about to start.
We got to say, we got 8 minutes left with you here. So,
but he would not be in tune with these kind of angles, like the human angles like that or whatever. And you raise a good point. Let me quickly say, in this limited amount of time, I want to say that I think the most probable winner, and I kind of hate to say this, but I just keep coming back to it. Seismic Beauty to me looks like the most probable winner on the Saturday card. Yeah. So, but do I trust her 100%? No, but I there's no one in there I want to take against her. So that kind of tells you something right there. I also want to say in the sprint, a horse I picked second, I think is very live, called Big City Lights. Here again is when you can read a form, also get some human information like you were just talking about, Jared, for the turf. Mm-hmm. Richard Mandela was talking up Big City Lights this week in terms of he was planning to run him in the Chosen Brawn Stakes. This is really ironic of what I'm going to say now. That he works and is trained so well that he said, I have to run him in the sprint. I have to. He feels he's that light. And this is a guy that has as good a Breeders' Cup record. I mean, he won 4 Breeders' Cup races in one day when there weren't 14 of them. And this horse is 15-1 on the morning line. 15-1, and I think he's very live. And here's the key. He's won 7 out of 13 career starts. But you know what his record really kind of is? It's really 11 for 13. In other words, he's only 2 away from being undefeated. Why do I say that? He ran against the Chosen Run, the race he's skipping to run in this race, 4 times and finished second to him every time. And a couple of times ran too good to lose for sure. So if you take the Chosen Run out, this horse is 11 for 13. And he's 15-1. When do you see any horse who's that, in essence, 11 for 13, and you can get 15-1 on him?
It's crazy.
Not very often.
No, I'll tell you what. Is that a horse? That was a horse that I had no interest or didn't even consider really until I was diving back through them today. And that's honestly, not to give a spoiler, but he made my top 4 because of the upside. Of what now there's a lot of question marks. Hadn't ran since January, and you're getting 15-1, like you said.
That's the key. That's the key. If he's 9-2 or 4-1 or 3-1 or something, forget it.
Yeah,
15-1 with Richard Mandela.
We could talk about that. Yeah,
and the thing is, he could have taken what would probably be a free bingo square in the Chosen Brawn Stakes. This horse would be odds on and probably win.
Yeah.
So, and he's already got Copian in here too, which I think that makes this even more interesting. And I don't think she's without a chance herself. But this horse is very intriguing at that price, 15-1. So getting to the turf, Minihawk to me is, I almost made her my most probable winner. But I just, I've seen too many good ARC horses come over and not run well. What the greatest being Dancing Brave. who was one of the greatest horses of all times. And they were having weather like we're having now at Santa Anita, where it's in the 90s. And they sent him over from France where it was cold, and he came here and melted. And he ran fourth as a heavy favorite in one of the strongest Breeders' Cup turfs you'll ever see. I mean, it was phenomenal. Who ran 1, 2, 3 in that race. And so I think Minihawk, though, is a standout on class. I just don't quite trust her enough to make her my most probable of the day. But when you look at that arc, it's similar to Forever Young's Saudi Cup because she lost, but she was over 5 lengths in front of third in a big field. She ran well enough to win about 95 out of 100 arcs. And her record beyond that is sterling. I mean, it's just a terrific record. I think she's the real deal. I'm comfortable with them bringing her back this fast. He's done it before and had success. I picked Elias second. I think a good 10-1 shot in there and picking third, Amalok, who is sneaky. He's a little sneaky in this race. He's sharp coming into this race for a good trainer. And that last race, horses that have come out of that race into the Breeders' Cup turf have done well in the past. And he ran a real bang up victory there. So, and I picked Rebels Romance fourth. And it's just a case I'm going to sway away from the public. He'll either be the favorite, probably the second favorite, because Minihawk has to be favored. But I just think I respect him. He's a wonderful horse. But I just kind of get the feeling maybe this won't be his Breeders' Cup this time. But I love Minihawk very strongly here.
I think it's just so, we've talked a lot about it on Blinkers Off, kind of leading up to it, where it's like if they choose to run her here against against this caliber field, because it's not like Rebels Romance is the only good horse in the race.
That's right.
Besides her, it's a hell of a race. If they choose to do that, and what I believe she would have won, or would have been a strong favorite, very strong favorite in the Filly and Mare or turf, like. Oh, well, that tells you a lot,
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes, Jared, we end up making these things get so complicated because there's so much. And what's part of what makes racing great? There's so much so much information, so much to analyze. But here's the simplicity of it to me. Could Rebels Romance ever win an arc? I don't think so, to be honest with you.
No.
Probably not.
No.
So who am I going to pick? The filly that ran well enough to win 95 out of 100 arcs, or the horse that could never win an arc? It's not that hard. And she's going to get better ground that she prefers, the firmer ground than she had in the arc. So that's another plus for her. And it's another reason I think they're sending her here, because they feel she'll be suited to this firm Del Mar turf like a T. And that's scary. As much talent as it looks like she has.
Yeah, I think and the fact that 8 and 2 had mentioned, like, pretty much like I said, like it was like they never really questioned, like, we're going to the Breeders' Cup with her. She's that kind of horse. We're going to the Breeders' Cup to get that fast turf that she likes. She wants to go long. I think she's going to be a lot to handle in this one. I love her here. Any other plays that or maybe a horse that you're interested in or not interested in that is a short price or anything like that?
Well, one thing to follow, just to put the icing on the cake with Minihawk, is I get the feeling she might have a Nabal-like talent. And I think that will say enough to you guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so now one other race I think would be good to talk about. It's the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. And there's another one with Nisos. And what do you do? We've been texting our brains out all year with him. Him and Fierceness have been a lot of our texting. And Nisos, I mean, we love him. He's so good, and he is, but he's so frustrating. I mean, as I texted you guys, I'm not going to believe he's actually running till he leaves the gate.
Yep.
I mean, that's, to me, it wouldn't shock me if at the last minute he comes out. But if he's in there, I have to think he's the horse. Because when we saw Bob Baffert say this week, I wish I'd put him in the Classic.
Me too, by the way. I wish he was there.
As good as this Classic is. And Baffert, I mean, you know, that means a lot to me that he said that. Listen, I've been on the Nisos bandwagon ever since his first start. One of my favorite morning lines I ever made in my long career of doing that was his debut. He was in the 10th race at Santa Anita at the fall meet, and they were betting a different Baffert horse by the name of Urban Legend. He went off at 3-1 in the race, and I made Nisos the favorite, and he went off at 6-1 in that race. And the favorite was a horse called EJ Won the Cup, which Aaron would identify with because that's named for the Stanley Cup, and EJ, who played for at the time Colorado.
Yep, Eric Johnson. Yep.
Eric Johnson. So EJ wins the cup. Was the 9-5 favorite. He had run second at Del Mar in his debut. Well, what happened in that race? Did the horse that was 3-1 from the Baffert barn win, or did the horse I made the favorite from the Baffert barn win? Well, we know Nisos won. He won by 10.5. And look what he's gone on to do.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that morning line, because hopefully some people were betting Nisos because I made him the favorite instead of betting the other Baffert horse in that race. And Full Serrano has to be, respected to the hilt. He ran so good in this race. I bet him in the Santa Anita handicap. He almost won it. And I bet Full Serrano in this race last year when he won it. So I'm a fan of his, but I just don't think Full Serrano at his best can beat Nisos. Nisos he's something special when he runs. It's just been unfortunate we don't get to see him run much.
Yeah, everything about Full Serrano was like, I'm picking him. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I love him, and because he's coming in the race, kind of very similar to last year, where he ran long in the Pacific Classic, then went to the Dirt Mile, ran long in the Goodwood. Now he's back here. He looked amazing, by the way, last year in the Breeders' Cup. And so you're like, okay, I got it. This is the whole. And then you're just like, damn it, Nisos. I can't quit Nisos. The Nisos only lost one race, and it was off of how long was that layoff? It
might have been the best race he's ever run.
Yeah, 15 months. It was in the slop. He didn't get the trip at all. He was hung outside. He still almost won.
Consider the competition in that race.
Yeah,
maybe the best field all year, honestly. Yeah.
That to me very likely is the best race he's ever run. It's like, in many respects, perhaps Zenyatta's best race was her last one that she barely lost because you can't believe she made it that close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Mike Smith told me that he felt she was not really responding early. He was considering pulling her up.
Yeah.
And she finally got into stride and she darn near won the thing against a horse, Blame, that loved that track. There's a Breeders' Cup. If it had been in a different track, Zenyatta might have won anyway.
Yep.
But he was a real horse for course. He loved that main track of Churchill, Blame. He loved it. Great record there. And that went against Zenyatta too. But many people think Seattle Slew's best race was the Jockey Club Gold Cup, in which Exceller beat him a nose, and Seattle Slew was passed by Exceller with Shoemaker, and Cordero comes back on with Seattle. So you couldn't believe in a 1.5 mile race, Seattle Slew's coming back on, and it was a whisker. One of my favorite Charlie Whittingham memories was standing with him in front of the grandstand in Santa Anita one morning, and I brought up that race, and he took his glasses and he raised them and he looked at me and he goes, "People forget I won that race. Exceller won that race, not Seattle Slew." But see, Seattle Slew, Seattle Slew's owners there, Mickey Taylor, once told me he considered that probably Seattle Slew's most important race going to stud, because it proved he was that much quality at a 1.5 miles to come back on in a 1.5 mile race. They knew he was fast, but for him to show that heart and that just not throw in the towel and be coming on again at the end against a top horse in Exceller, that Mickey Taylor told me that was one of the key races for him going to stud, that breeders believed in that horse, that he wasn't just a fast horse. He had more than that. And look at what he did at stud. He outdid Secretariat. He outdid Affirmed. He outdid Spectacular. He outdid all of them one of the great sires of our time.
For sure. Yeah. All right, John, let's put a bow on this thing. Give the people one last kind of paragraph, whatever. Like, okay, they're betting, they're handicapping the Breeders' Cup. They're on, like, what's some advice that over all these years you could give somebody that would help them kind of hone in on the Breeders' Cup handicapping?
Well, to me, it's a situation where you rarely are going to get a situation in which a world-class horse like a Forever Young, that you're going to get more than 2-1 or 8-5 or 5-2 on a horse like that in this situation. Unfortunately, we're not getting 6-1, 7-1, 8-1, 9-1, 10-1, which I was hoping with Sovereignty in the race. But the good news is we don't have to beat Sovereignty now. And that's saying a lot, because it wouldn't have been easy beating him, to say the least. I mean, I'm not saying you two guys were like off your rockers to be feeling he was pretty much a slam dunk. Based on what we've seen this year, it's understandable why anybody would come to that conclusion. But I thought it was a golden opportunity to get a horse at a really nice price. It's not going to be that good of a price, but he's still not going to be the favorite. Fierceness is going to be the favorite. And it's hard to say. There's a chance Forever Young. I mean, he's probably going to be in that 4-1 range at least. And that's a big price on a horse that good in this situation, where I think, as good as he's looked, I think he's going to fire. I think he's going to run big, and I think he can win the race.
There you go. Spoken like he knows what he's talking about. Jon White, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we'll be talking in the next probably 3 seconds because the Dodgers have started. So, until next time, thank you so much, John. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.
I like that. The next 3 seconds.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I guarantee you before I wrap up this show, we'll have a text from him because the game's on.
Yeah, it's I was got it on the background though. I think they're getting ready to throw out the first pitch here. So yeah, obviously John, a big Dodgers fan, so we'll be watching that with him for sure, and keeping an eye on that. But as always, great interview. Yeah, and my cat made an appearance. Did you see that?
I did. I was cracking up. I wanted to text you like, hey, get that get it off the screen.
There was one time, I think John was still talking, but I thought he stopped because she hit the mute button. And so I started talking. I don't know if he had stopped or not. So whoops. And then he started talking again. I was like, is he muted? I'm like, no, the cat stepped on the mute. So anyway.
You got to control your damn animals, man.
Well, the cat gets to do whatever she wants. That's the rule.
I could tell. You live in her world.
The cat was rubbing on the microphone at one point. I was like, this is not good.
Wow. Well, you know what? This is a professional show, so
That's
listen.
right. Yeah.
No, guys. Yeah, great interview as always. Not surprised.
Nope.
I think with the Forever Young, that's just going to be such a you and I were talking about it earlier. It's like it sucks. Sovereignty is in the race, but it's just going to be a hell of a race to watch. Like there's a lot of because like you said, we talked about with John, like all these horses like to run well, right? Whether they win or lose, they all can't finish top 3, right? So there's got to be something's got to give, and it'll be fascinating to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I here's the deal. Like, I didn't want to be too like, oh, I hate him, because I don't hate him. I think he's got a shot. I think he is a very nice horse. I mean, hell, I picked him last time at the Breeders' Cup, but I haven't seen just that absolutely brilliant effort other than the one time. And I know, hey, he could do that again, but
it was
a lot of his other races just they didn't get there for me, so to speak. So that's kind of, I don't know. That's just kind of where I landed on it. But look, I didn't have any interest in him. I have a lot of interest in him now because I have a lot of interest in a few of those horses, with the scratch of the one who I thought would win pretty easily. So.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us. Again, if we'll get more into our opinions, this was a show today based with Jon White. We will be on tomorrow evening, tomorrow afternoon, with blinkers off, talking about our picks, Haltern's picks, my picks, going over the racing. So if you're looking for more on that, we will be back tomorrow for our third show this week. We'll have one more on Saturday as well. But remember, go to racingdudes.com. Go get the betting Bible. It's available right now. We have it. It's released, 23 pages. It has the trends included with it, everything you need. My bets, Haltron's bets, Jon White's top 4 picks for every single race. So if you want more detailed picks on his, that's all available. RacingDudes.com. You'll see it there right on the homepage, or click the products page. We're on Twitter at Racing_Dudes, Instagram, Facebook. You can find all episodes of Blinkers Off by visiting our podcast page, YouTube. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. Man, I'm tired. So time to take a slight break, but I'm going to be right back at it because it doesn't stop until Friday.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, for us, it's so funny because the week leading up to the event is just jammed. And so people, think, oh, it's Friday, Saturday, you guys must be swamped. It's like, no, not really. Everything's done then. Then we can just sit back and, enjoy it and update things, obviously, but enjoy it overall. But man, getting all the stuff ready, all the promotion, the videos, the products, that's what takes a long time. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm tired. I feel like we have one more very busy day. And then, like I said, Friday comes and here we go.
Yep. All you can after that. It's always a good feeling this race, or for the Breeders' Cup, the Derby, whatever, the Travers, those big events. When you just sit down and like people ask why when we go to the races or we're watching, like why we're just like chill. It's like because we've been working our asses off for weeks, months. It's like now I can actually I can't do anything. Nothing I need to do now other than to see what happens.
Right. Yeah.
But all right, guys, that's gonna do it for us. I'm Jared Welch. He's Aaron Haltman. Get started on handicap if you haven't already, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Blinkers Off. Join our horse racing community at racingdudes.com and follow us on Twitter at racing_dudes. Want to make money betting horses? Bet with the Racing Dudes.